My name is Lucas Merritt. I am 35 years old. I slumped while working at a building site in Chicago, and I died for 10 minutes. I met Jesus Christ face to face, and he showed me the one sin that is sending millions of Christians to hell every single day, every 10 seconds, people who prayed, people who went to church, people who called themselves believers. And today I am going to tell you everything I saw, everything I heard, and everything Jesus told me to say to you, because he sent me back for a reason, and that reason is you. Let me start from the beginning. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, born and raised. My mother, Patricia Merritt, was a woman of faith. Every Sunday morning, without fail, she had me and my two brothers dressed and sitting in the third pew from the front at Greater Grace Baptist Church on 63rd Street. I'm talking rain, snow, sleet. It did not matter. Patricia Merritt did not miss church, and she made sure we didn't either. I grew up hearing about Jesus. I grew up singing about Jesus. I got baptized when I was 12 years old in a white robe and a tub at the front of that church while the whole congregation clapped and the choir sang. I said the prayer. I meant it. I was a Christian. I knew I was a Christian. But somewhere between the age of 12 and the age of 35, life happened. Work happened. Bills happened. Pain happened. And slowly, quietly, without me even noticing it, something crept into my heart and set up camp there. Something I didn't recognize as dangerous. Something I actually thought was justified. Something I thought God understood. And that something was killing me spiritually while I was walking around thinking I was fine. I'll get to that. I promise I'll get to it. But first, let me tell you about the morning of October 14th. It was a Tuesday. Cold morning, the way Chicago mornings get in mid-October, where the wind off the lake cuts right through your jacket and finds your bones. I was working a construction job on a site in the South Loop near Michigan Avenue. Big commercial project. I'd been doing construction work for 11 years, framing, concrete, site labor. That was my life. Honest work, physical work, the kind of work that makes your body ache by Thursday and makes Friday feel like a gift. I got to the site at 6:45 in the morning. My crew foreman, a big Polish guy named Daryl, handed me a coffee from the gas station across the street. I drank it standing by the trailer, watching the sky turn gray and pink over the skyline. I remember that sky. I remember thinking it looked almost painted, almost too beautiful for a Tuesday. We got to work at 7. I was hauling materials on the third floor. Nothing unusual. I had done it 1,000 times. Steel rebar, boards, equipment, back and forth. The other guys were moving around me, doing their jobs. The site was loud the way construction sites always are. Drills, saws, shouting, the beep of machinery reversing. Somewhere around 9:45 in the morning, I felt something strange in my chest. Not pain, exactly. More like a heaviness. Like someone had placed a heavy stone right in the center of my sternum. I stopped walking. I set down what I was carrying. I put my hand on my chest. I thought maybe I'd pulled something. I thought maybe the cold was getting to me. Then the heaviness turned into pressure. Then the pressure turned into heat. Then everything went sideways. I didn't fall dramatically. I didn't grab my chest and shout. I just went down. My knees buckled and I sat down hard on the plywood floor of the third level. And then I tipped sideways, and then I was on my back, looking up at the gray Chicago sky through the open framework of the building, and then everything went dark. The last thing I heard was somebody shouting my name. I don't know who it was. It might have been Daryl. I heard Lucas, and then I heard nothing. What happened next, I have spent the last 4 months trying to find the right words for. And I want to be honest with you. There are no right words. Human language was not built to describe what I experienced. I'm going to do my best, but understand that what I tell you is like a man trying to describe the ocean to someone who has never seen water. I can get close. I cannot get all the way there. When the darkness took me, it wasn't like sleep. When you sleep, there's a gradual fading. There's a loosening. This was not that. This was instantaneous. One moment I was on my back on a plywood floor in Chicago. The next moment I was somewhere else entirely. I was standing. That was the first thing I noticed. I was standing, and my body felt different. Not heavier, lighter. Like every ounce of tiredness I had ever carried in 35 years of living had been removed from me in an instant. I felt strong, clear. More awake than I had ever been in my entire life. More present, more real. As if everything I had experienced before this moment had been a shadow, and now I was seeing the actual thing that the shadow had been pointing toward. I was standing in a place that I can only describe as a vast open landscape of light. Not blinding light, not the kind that makes you squint and look away. This light was warm. This light had texture. This light felt like the first morning of spring and the last evening of summer, and every peaceful moment you have ever experienced somehow compressed into a single sensation. And it was everywhere, above me, below me, around me. The ground I was standing on appeared solid, appeared real, but it was luminous. Everything was luminous, and I was alone. For a moment I just stood there. I didn't feel afraid. Oh, and that surprised me later when I thought about it, that I didn't feel afraid. Because if someone had told me before that moment that I would find myself dead and standing somewhere I had never been, I would have said I'd be terrified. But there was no terror there. There was only stillness, a silence so deep and so complete that it felt like its own kind of sound. Then I heard something behind me. I turned around, and I saw him. I am going to say this slowly because I need you to understand what I'm about to say. I have been in church my whole life. I have seen paintings of Jesus. I have seen movies about Jesus. I have heard 1,000 sermons about Jesus. I thought I knew what to expect if I ever came face to face with him. I was wrong. I was completely and totally wrong. Now, he was standing about 30 feet away from me when I first turned, and the first thing I noticed was not his face. The first thing I noticed was the peace that came from him. It moved ahead of him like a wave, like warmth moves ahead of a fire before you even see the flame. Before I could take in anything about what he looked like, I felt that peace hit me, and it nearly knocked me to my knees. It was the most powerful thing I have ever felt in my life. It was not just the absence of fear. It was the presence of something enormous and ancient and unshakable. A peace that had no edges, that had no ceiling, that had no floor. And then he walked toward me, and I saw his face. I am not going to tell you he looked like the paintings. He didn't. He looked like a man, and he didn't look like a man. His eyes... I can't tell you the color of his eyes because the color of his eyes was not a color I have ever seen in the natural world. It was deeper than brown, richer than gold, and when he looked at me, I felt seen in a way I have never felt seen before. Not seen as in somebody glancing at you, seen as in somebody knowing every single thing about you. Every thought, every memory, every secret, every wound, every choice, every prayer, every failure, every hope, and loving you anyway. Not tolerating you, not putting up with you, loving you, actively, powerfully, completely loving you. He stopped a few feet from me and he smiled. And when he smiled, I began to cry. I don't know where the tears came from. I didn't plan to cry. I didn't feel sad. Well, I just began to cry the way a man cries when he comes home after a very long time away and finally sits down at his own table. He said my name. He said, Lucas. Just that. Just my name. And the way he said it, it was not like anything I can describe. It was like my name in his mouth was the most important word ever spoken. Like every time in my life that I had felt unseen, unimportant, overlooked, forgotten. He was answering all of it in just one word. My name. Lucas. I said, Lord. And he nodded. Slowly. The way someone nods when they are confirming something deeply true. He said, I brought you here because I need you to see something. I need you to carry something back. I said, What is it? What do you need me to see? And he turned and he began to walk, and he gestured for me to follow him. Though we walked together through that landscape of light for what felt like a long time, though I could not tell you in minutes or hours. Time in that place did not work the way time works here. It was elastic. It stretched and compressed in ways I cannot explain. A moment could feel like an hour could feel like a moment. What I know is that we walked side by side, and as we walked, he spoke to me. He said, Lucas, do you know how many people are entering judgment every 10 seconds? I said no. He said, thousands, not hundreds. Thousands. People who lived their lives. People who had families, jobs, dreams. People who went to church, who sang worship songs, who said prayers before bed, who put money in the offering plate, who called themselves by my name. I stopped walking. I said, thousands of Christians? Going to hell? Every 10 seconds? He looked at me, and his expression was not anger. It was grief. A grief so vast and so deep that seeing it on his face almost broke me. He was not angry. He was heartbroken. He said, not because I did not love them, not because I did not call them, not because the door was not open, because of one thing that they carried with them through their entire lives that they never let go. One thing that I warned them about again and again through my word, through circumstances, through people I sent into their lives, and they held on to it because they convinced themselves it was justified. They convinced themselves that I understood. They told themselves that what they felt was reasonable. They told themselves that anyone in their position would feel the same way. I said, "What is it, Lord?" "What is the sin?" And he stopped walking. He turned to face me fully. And he said one word. He said, "Unforgiveness." I want you to sit with that word for a moment. Unforgiveness. Not murder, not adultery, not drug addiction, not atheism. Unforgiveness. I looked at him and I said, "Lord, unforgiveness? People are going to hell for unforgiveness?" And he said, "Lucas, I need you to understand what unforgiveness actually is. Because my people have been sold a lie. They have been told that unforgiveness is a feeling. They have been told that it is an emotion. They have been told that it is a wound. And because it is framed as a wound, they wear it as a badge. They tend it like a garden. They feed it. They water it. They invite other people to come and look at it and validate it. And while they are tending that wound, they do not see what is happening on the inside. They do not see what is happening to their soul." He reached out and he placed his hand on my shoulder. And when he touched me, I want you to understand, I felt everything. I felt every prayer I had ever prayed. I felt every moment in church. I felt every time I had read a Bible verse. And then I felt something else. I felt something dark and cold sitting in the center of my chest. Not in my physical chest. Deeper than that. In the center of who I was. And I knew immediately what it was, because I carried it too. He said, "You feel it?" I said, "Yes." He said, "That has been there for 7 years, Lucas. 7 years. You know what it is." And I did. I knew exactly what it was. I knew who it was about. And I am going to tell you because he told me to tell you everything. Well, 7 years ago, my brother Marcus stole money from me. Not a small amount. We had been saving together, the two of us and our mother, to buy her a house. She had rented her whole life. She was 61 years old, and she had never owned anything. We had a plan. We had an account. We had worked for 3 years to get that money together. And Marcus, my own blood, my own brother, the man I had shared a bedroom with for 16 years of my life, Marcus took $38,000 from that account and spent it. He spent it on a woman who left him 8 months later. He spent it on clothes and gambling and things I still don't fully understand. And by the time I found out, the money was gone. My mother's dream was gone. I will not describe to you what that did to me. I'll say this. I went to church for 7 years after that. I praised God. I sang. I prayed. I served. I was a deacon in my church for 4 years. I handed out programs. I organized the food pantry. I did all of it. And the entire time, in the deep center of my soul, I hated my brother. Not disliked. Not was hurt by. Hated. With a cold, quiet, 7-year-old hatred that I had dressed up in the language of, I forgave him, but I can't forget. That was my language. That was my justification. I forgave him, but I can't forget. I had said those exact words to my pastor. I had said them to my mother. I had said them to God in prayer. And every time I said them, I believed them. I genuinely believed I had forgiven Marcus. Jesus looked at me standing in that luminous place, and he said, "You never forgave him, Lucas. What you did was bury it, and buried things do not die, they grow." I said, "Lord, what he did was wrong." He said, "Yes, it was wrong. I did not say it was right. I did not ask you to call it right. I did not ask you to pretend it did not happen. I asked you to release it, to release him, and not for his sake, for yours, not because he deserved it, because you needed it. Because what you are carrying in your soul has a weight that your soul was never designed to carry. And it has been pressing down on everything. Your prayer life, your worship, your ability to receive from me, your ability to love, for 7 years. I said, "But Lord, I was in church. I was serving. I was doing everything right." And here is what he said. He said, and I want you to hear every word. He said, "Lucas, a man can sing every hymn ever written and still be dying of thirst. A man can serve in every ministry in his church and still have a locked room in his heart that I have never been allowed to enter. Service without surrender is performance. Worship without wholeness is a sound I hear but cannot fully receive. I want all of you. And unforgiveness locks the door to the room where all of you lives." Then he showed me something, and this is the part that broke me completely. He stretched out his hand, and what I can only describe as a vision opened in front of us, like a window into a scene. And in that scene I saw a woman. She was maybe in her 70s. White hair. She was sitting in a pew in a church somewhere. It looked like a small church in the South. Wood pews, stained glass. the kind of church that has been there for 80 years and still smells like old wood and candles. She was singing. No, her eyes were closed. Her hands were raised. She was singing a hymn with everything she had. And I could see her face, and her face was peaceful and radiant, and anyone looking at her would have said that woman is filled with the Spirit of God. And then Jesus said, "Look deeper." And I don't know how, but I did. I looked deeper. And beneath the singing, beneath the raised hands, beneath the peaceful face, I saw it. A knot. A dark, tight, complex knot in the center of her spirit. And I knew without being told what it was. It was a knot of unforgiveness she had been carrying for 40 years. 40 years. Against her daughter. Against her daughter who had chosen a life that the woman did not approve of, who had made choices the woman could not reconcile, and who had been cut off. Quietly, thoroughly, with a Christian smile, for 4 decades. And I watched as that woman finished her song and sat down and bowed her head to pray. And her prayer was beautiful. Her words were beautiful. She prayed for her church. She prayed for her pastor. She prayed for her grandchildren. She prayed for the nation. And at no point did she mention her daughter. At no point did she release what she had been holding. Because she did not think of it as unforgiveness. She thought of it as righteousness. She thought God was on her side. She had told herself so many times that what she felt was holy that she believed it completely. Jesus said quietly, "She will not let me touch that knot. Every time I reach for it, she pulls away. She will stand before me one day having sung 10,000 songs, having served in that church for 60 years, and I will have to say to her, 'You never let me into that room.' And she will be stunned, because in her mind, she never stopped serving me." I was weeping by this point, fully weeping. I said, "Lord, is she going to?" He said, "I do not reveal destinies to you of specific souls. What I am showing you is a pattern that is costing my church millions of souls, a pattern that the enemy has used more effectively than any other weapon in his arsenal, because it hides in the language of righteousness. It hides in the language of justice. It hides in the language of, I forgave, but I can't forget. And what they did was wrong, and I have a right to feel this way. And because it sounds like something reasonable, my people never see it for what it is. What it is, Lucas, is a wall between them and me. What it is a chain. What it is a slow poison that empties a soul of my presence without making a single sound. He showed me more. He showed me scene after scene, and each one went through me like a blade. He showed me a pastor, a real preacher, a man who stood in a pulpit and preached powerful sermons that moved congregations, a man who had led people to salvation, whose ministry had touched thousands. And this man carried unforgiveness against his father, a man who had beaten him as a child, who had left the family when the pastor was 11, who had never called, never written, never acknowledged what he had done, and the pastor had never gone back to that wound. He had outrun it. He had built a ministry on top of it. He had preached grace to thousands of people while the wound that most needed grace in his life sat untouched and unaddressed in the basement of his heart. And Jesus showed me the gap between what this man preached and what this man lived, and the gap was enormous. And people were receiving from the man's gifts and going away full, but the man himself was emptying out. Service was draining him. Prayer felt distant to him. Worship felt mechanical to him. And he didn't know why. And no one around him knew why. Because he looked like everything was fine. Because he had learned to perform wholeness rather than possess it. Jesus said, "Gifts are irrevocable. I gave him gifts, and I do not take them back. But gifts operate through grace. The condition of the soul affects the depth of the communion. What he is preaching from the outside of my presence rather than the inside of it, and he feels it every single day, and he does not know what is wrong." He showed me a young man. Couldn't have been more than 26, 27 years old. Handsome kid. He was at a Bible study, leading the group. He was sharp. He knew the word. He quoted chapter and verse from memory. And he had unforgiveness against a friend who had betrayed him in college, who had spread lies about him, who had caused him to lose a relationship he cared about, who had never apologized, who had moved on with his life as if nothing had happened. And this young man had moved on too, on the surface. But every time a new friendship came close to the depth that the old friendship had reached, he sabotaged it. He didn't know he was doing it. I thought he was being discerning. He thought he was protecting himself. But what he was actually doing was making sure that no one could ever hurt him, the way that one person had hurt him 7 years ago. And in doing so, he had become isolated in the middle of a community, surrounded by people, known by no one, leading Bible studies from behind a wall. Jesus said, Unforgiveness does not just affect the vertical relationship, the relationship between the soul and me. It destroys the horizontal relationships too. It makes authentic love impossible, because the person who is locked in unforgiveness has secretly decided that people cannot be trusted, that love always ends in pain, that vulnerability is danger. And I designed my people to grow through community, through love, through the kind of closeness that requires risk. When unforgiveness closes that door, the soul stops growing. It survives, but it does not grow. He showed me hell. I need to tell you about that. I don't want to tell you about that. Even now, 4 months later, when I close my eyes and go back to that moment, something in me resists, because what I saw was not something that can be described without causing pain. But he showed it to me for a reason. And the reason was so that you would know that it is real, and you would know what is at stake, and you would take what I am telling you with every ounce of seriousness it deserves. He did not take me into hell. I want to be clear about that. He showed it to me the way you might show someone a city from a high place, at a distance, but clearly. He showed me the edges of it, and what hit me first was not sight. So what hit me first was sound, and the sound was... there is no word for it. It was the sound of absolute finality. It was the sound of every regret that has ever existed compounded into a single, unending frequency. It was the sound of people who knew with complete certainty that what they were experiencing would never end. Not tomorrow, not in 100 years, not in 1,000, never. And that knowledge, that forever, was its own separate torment layered on top of everything else. And then I saw the faces. I saw faces that I recognized as faces that had worn faith. I don't mean I recognized specific people. I mean I recognized the shape of who they had been. People who had had crosses on their walls, and Bibles on their nightstands, and church friends who called them on their birthdays. Yeah, people whose eulogies had spoken about what a Christian life they had lived. And they were here, not because God had wanted them here, not because he had placed them here as punishment, but because they had spent their lives choosing the thing they loved more than they chose him, and the thing they loved more than they chose him was the right to hold on to their pain. I am going to say that again. The thing they had chosen over their relationship with God, the thing that had ultimately cost them everything, was the right to hold on to their pain. That is what unforgiveness is. At its core, stripped of all the language we dress it in, unforgiveness is the decision to hold on to pain because releasing it feels like letting the other person win, and in exchange for that feeling, in exchange for the satisfaction of holding the offense, people are trading their eternity. I began to weep in a way I have never wept before or since. Not quiet tears, loud, heaving, broken weeping, because I recognized that place. Not because I had been there before, because I recognized that I had been walking toward it for 7 years while thinking I was fine, while thinking I was saved, while thinking I was serving God, while thinking the wall in my heart was just a wound and not a decision. Jesus put his hand on my shoulder again. He said, "This is why I brought you here, not to terrify you, not to punish you, to open your eyes." He walked me away from what he had shown me, and we sat together. And I don't know how it's possible to sit with the Lord of all creation the way you sit with an old friend, but that is what it felt like. He sat with me in that light, the way my mother used to sit with me at the kitchen table when something was wrong. Not rushing, not lecturing, just present. He said, "I want you to understand the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. My people confuse them constantly, and it causes them to resist forgiveness because they think forgiving means accepting what happened. It does not." He said, "Forgiveness is what happens inside you. It is the release of the debt. It is the decision to take the case out of your own hands and place it in mine. It is the acknowledgement that justice belongs to me, not to you. Forgiveness says, I am no longer holding this against you in my own heart. Forgiveness does not mean that what happened was right. Forgiveness does not mean you must trust this person again. Forgiveness does not mean you must place yourself back into a situation that harmed you. Forgiveness does not mean the relationship is automatically restored. Forgiveness is not about the other person at all. Forgiveness is about you. Forgiveness is you choosing to be free." He said, "Reconciliation is different. Reconciliation is the rebuilding of a relationship, and it requires both parties, and it requires genuine repentance from the one who caused harm, and it may or may not be possible. I do not require reconciliation in all cases. I know that some relationships cannot and should not be rebuilt. I know that some people who hurt you will never acknowledge what they did. I know that some doors are closed permanently for reasons of safety and wisdom. I do not ask you to pretend otherwise. What I ask is that you release the debt inside your own soul, regardless of whether the other person ever acknowledges it. Because the debt you hold is not hurting them. It is hurting you. The unforgiveness you carry does not jail the person who wronged you. It jails you. You are the prisoner, and I am standing at the cell door with the key, and I need you to let me use it. I sat with that for a long time. Then I said, Lord, how? How do you do it? How do you forgive something that really hurt? Something that really cost you? How do you let it go when it still feels so real, so present, so wrong? And he smiled. Not a quick smile. A deep, patient, unhurried smile. He said, I will tell you how, and I need you to tell them how. Because this is the part my people are missing. They know they should forgive. Thousands of sermons have told them they should forgive. They agree that they should forgive. But no one has sat with them and walked them through what it actually looks like in practice. So let me show you. He said, the first thing you must understand is that forgiveness is a decision before it is a feeling. The feeling follows the decision. It does not precede it. My people wait to feel ready to forgive, and the readiness never comes, because the enemy makes sure it never comes. He keeps the offense fresh. He sends reminders. He sends people who look like the person who hurt you, or who say things that sound like what that person said. He keeps the wound open because an open wound is a drain, and you will never feel ready to forgive someone who hurt you deeply. You make the decision first. You say with your mouth and with your will, I choose to forgive. And then the feeling, over time, follows. He said, the second thing is that you must speak it, not just think it, not just intend it. Speak it in prayer. Say the name. Say what they did. Say, I forgive them. Say, I release this to you. Say, this debt is no longer mine to collect. There is power in the spoken word. I made the world with words. Your words carry weight in the spiritual realm. When you speak forgiveness out loud, something shifts. Something is released. Do not underestimate the power of a spoken act of forgiveness. He said, the third thing is that you must do it more than once. Forgiveness for deep wounds is not a single event. It is a practice. You will forgive, and then 3 days later, the memory will resurface, and the hurt will feel fresh, and you will need to forgive again, and then again, and again. Until the day comes, and it will come, when the memory surfaces and the hurt is not fresh. When you can think about what happened without it gripping you. When you can say their name without that cold thing activating in your chest. That day will come, but it comes on the other side of 100 repetitions of the same choice. Do not be discouraged when you forgive and still feel hurt. That is not failure. That is the process. Keep choosing it. Keep speaking it. Keep releasing it. The feeling will follow. He said, the fourth thing is this. Bring me into the room. Do not try to do it alone, because alone it is nearly impossible. The human soul was not designed to absorb the weight of deep offense without help. That is why I came. That is why I went to the cross. Not just to pay the price of sin, but to enter into the deepest places of human pain and be present there. When you come to me with your unforgiveness, you are not bringing me something I am surprised by. I know what was done to you. I was there when it happened. I felt it too. Every wound that was inflicted on you, I felt. And when you bring it to me, I do not dismiss it. I do not minimize it. I do not say it was nothing. I say, I know. I saw. Bring it to me. Let me carry it. Let me be the justice that you have been trying to be. He paused, and then he said something that I will carry for the rest of my life. He said, Lucas, the reason forgiveness is the hardest thing I ask of my people is because it is the most divine. Every other commandment operates within the range of human capacity. But forgiveness, the kind I am asking for, the forgiveness of deep and genuine injury, that is not natural to the human heart. That requires me. That requires my nature operating through your nature. And that is exactly why it is so powerful. When you truly forgive someone who has deeply wronged you, you are not acting human anymore. You are acting like me. And that scares the enemy more than almost anything else you can do. I was quiet for a long time after he said that. And then he said, I am going to send you back. I said, Lord, I don't want to go back. He smiled again. That deep, patient smile. He said, I know, but you are not done there yet. You have a mother who needs you. You have work to do, and you have something to carry back to my people. I said, will they believe me? He said, some will, and those who believe will act on it, and those who act on it will find that what I am telling you is true, that on the other side of forgiveness is a freedom they have forgotten exists, a closeness to me that they have been starving for without knowing what they were starving for, a peace that does not depend on their circumstances, and a life that finally has the depth they have been trying to create through every other means. He said, "Tell them I love them, not as a slogan, not as a bumper sticker phrase. Tell them I love them with a love that looked at everything they would ever do, everything they would ever fail at, then everything they would ever carry in shame and regret, and chose them anyway. Before they were born, I chose them, and I am not standing at a distance watching them struggle with their unforgiveness the way a disappointed teacher watches a failing student. I am inside the struggle. I am present in the pain. And every time they have cried alone in a room about what was done to them, I was in that room. Every time, and I wept with them. Because what was done to many of them was genuinely terrible, and I did not turn away from that. I held it, and I am actively waiting, for them to bring it to me so that I can do what only I can do with it." He said, "Tell them that the Matthew 6:14 and 15 that they skip over in Sunday school is not a suggestion. It is a spiritual law. If you forgive others their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses." I did not put those words there to frighten my people. I put them there because it is simply the truth of how the spiritual world operates. Forgiveness and unforgiveness are not just moral categories. They are spiritual conditions that open and close doors. The door that unforgiveness closes is the door through which my forgiveness flows to you. And if my forgiveness does not flow to you, you cannot stand in my presence. Not because I am unwilling, because you are holding the door shut from your side. I am always willing. I am always reaching. But I gave human beings a will, and I honor that will even when it is working against them. He reached out and he put both hands on my face. And he looked at me the way, I'm going to say this even if it sounds strange, he looked at me the way my mother looked at me when I was small and I had been hurt, and she wanted me to know that she saw it, that she felt it, that she was not going anywhere. And he said, "Go back, Lucas. Go back and live it first. Forgive your brother, not because he deserves it, because you need to be free. Go home, get on your knees, say his name, say what he did, and release it. And then pick up the phone and call your mother and tell her that Marcus is forgiven. You don't have to call Marcus right away if it's too soon, but release the debt in your own soul today, not next week, today." And then the light became everything, and the sound of the Chicago construction site came rushing back. And I heard beeping and shouting, and I heard someone saying, "He's back, he's back." And I opened my eyes, and I was on my back on a cold concrete floor in a building that I would never look at, the same way again. I spent 3 days in Northwestern Memorial Hospital. They told me I had experienced a sudden cardiac event, a form of ventricular fibrillation. My heart stopped. One of my coworkers, a young woman named Tanya who had taken a CPR class 2 years before, performed chest compressions on me for 7 minutes until the paramedics arrived. The doctors told me that Tanya saved my life. I believe them. I also believe that my life was returned to me by someone who had a purpose for what I just told you. The morning of my second day in the hospital, I asked my mother to come in alone, and I told her about Marcus. Well, all of it. The full extent of what I had been carrying. And she wept. Not because she was surprised. Mothers know. She said, "I know you never fully forgave him, baby. I've known for years." And I said, "I know you know, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I made you carry that awareness alone." And then, sitting in a hospital bed with an IV in my arm, and monitors beeping around me, I prayed out loud for the first time in my life with full honesty. Not a performance prayer, not a Sunday morning prayer, a real prayer. I said, "God, Father." I say the name Marcus Merritt, my brother, and I say what he did. He took $38,000 that wasn't his. He took my mother's dream, and I have been holding that against him for 7 years. And today, I release it. I release the debt. I take my hands off the case. I give the justice to you. I forgive Marcus, not because what he did was right, not because he has apologized, but because I choose to be free, and because you asked me to. I am telling you, something happened when I said those words. I don't have a scientific explanation for it. I felt that cold thing in the center of my chest, the one Jesus had pointed to in that luminous place. I felt it loosen. I felt it release. Not all at once, not like magic, but I felt the beginning of it. I felt the first crack in something that had been sealed for 7 years. And over the following weeks, as I made the same choice again and again, I felt more and more of it go. Until one morning I woke up, and I thought about Marcus, and I felt, not hate, not hurt, not that cold, righteous anger. I felt something I can only describe as wish him well energy. Not forced, not performed. Real. I actually wished my brother well, for the first time in 7 years. And I called him. He didn't answer. I left a voicemail. I said, "Marcus, it's Lucas. I'm not calling to relitigate anything. I'm not calling to make you feel bad. I'm calling to tell you that I forgive you." For real this time. Not the words. The actual thing. And I'm not asking for anything back from you. I just needed to say it. He called back 3 days later, and he was crying before he even said hello. And that is between us, and I will not tell you any more than that. But I will tell you that my mother called me after that phone call, and she was laughing and crying at the same time, and she said, "Whatever happened to you on that building site, don't you ever stop talking about it. Let me tell you what changed in my life after I forgave my brother. Because this is not just a feel-good testimony. This is a report on what forgiveness actually does. My prayer life changed immediately. Within a week of making that forgiveness decision, my prayer life changed in a way that shocked me. Prayer had always felt, if I'm honest, like I was talking into a ceiling. Not all the time. Sometimes it felt real, but mostly it felt like duty rather than encounter. After I forgave Marcus, something opened up in my prayer life that I cannot fully explain. I started having real conversations with God. Not monologues. Conversations. I would say something and then wait, and I would receive something back. Not always words, sometimes impressions, sometimes peace, sometimes direction that I knew didn't come from my own reasoning. The ceiling was gone. I was praying through to somewhere. And the door that Jesus had described was open in a way it had not been open before, and the difference was obvious and immediate. My worship changed. I had sung in church for 20 years and sung the same songs I had always sung and gotten what I always got, which was a pleasant emotional experience on a good Sunday and nothing much on a regular Sunday. After I forgave, I went to church for the first time post-hospital, and they were singing a song I had heard probably 300 times. And I'm telling you, I wept through the entire song. Not because the song was new, because I was new, because something in me was open in a way it had not been open before. The song was going somewhere inside me that the same song had never been able to reach before, because the room was unlocked, because the door was open. My relationship with my mother deepened, not because anything about her changed, because I changed, because unforgiveness, I see now, had made me subtly suspicious of everyone who loved me, because if Marcus, who I trusted completely, could betray me that badly, then some part of me had quietly decided that everyone was capable of the same betrayal. I had been holding everyone at arm's length for 7 years without fully knowing it. After I forgave, that invisible wall came down in my relationships. I became more open, more present, more able to receive love without waiting for the other shoe to drop. The anxiety that I had lived with for years, the low-level hum of dread that I had come to think of as just my personality, just the way I was wired, decreased significantly. Not overnight, but over the following months. I came to understand that a significant portion of what I had experienced as general anxiety was actually the spiritual and psychological weight of what I was carrying. Unforgiveness is heavy. It is heavier than we know, and when you put it down, the body notices. The mind notices. Now I want to speak to someone very specifically, because in this room, or on this video, or wherever you are right now, there is someone who is exactly where I was. And I need to speak to you directly. You are a Christian. You believe in God. You pray. You go to church when you can. You read your Bible sometimes. You know the songs. You know the language. And there is someone in your life. Maybe it's a parent. Maybe it's a sibling. Maybe it's an ex-husband or an ex-wife. Maybe it's a friend who betrayed you. Maybe it's a pastor who hurt you. Maybe it's a child who has broken your heart. Maybe it's someone who abused you. Maybe it's God himself that you're angry at, if you'll be honest. And you have been holding something against that person for a long time. And you have given it a name that protects it. You've called it my boundaries. You've called it my standards. You've called it wisdom. You've called it discernment. You've called it I forgave, but I don't forget. You've dressed it up in language that makes it sound like spiritual maturity, when it is actually a wound that has never been brought to the one person who can heal it. And here is what it has been doing to you without your knowledge. It has been the reason your prayer feels distant. It has been the reason worship feels mechanical. It has been the reason you can go to church on Sunday and feel absolutely nothing. Not because you aren't trying, not because God isn't real, but because the door is blocked. It has been the reason that deep joy, the kind the Bible talks about, the joy that has nothing to do with your circumstances, the peace that passes understanding, has felt like a description of someone else's experience rather than your own. It has been the reason that despite everything you have done in your walk with God, you still feel, in your most honest moments, like something is missing. Like there is a distance. Like you are on the outside of a warmth that you can see but cannot fully enter. You are not broken. You are not hopeless. You are not too far gone. You are one decision away from a different life. One decision. Not a complicated decision. Not a decision that requires you to call the person, or see them, or pretend what they did was acceptable. Just the decision, made in prayer, spoken out loud, to release the debt. I am asking you, Jesus asked me to ask you, do it today. Not when you feel ready. Not when they apologize. Not when justice has been served. Not when your feelings change. Today, get alone. Say the name. Say what they did. And say, I release this to you, God. I forgive. I take my hands off the case. This debt is no longer mine to hold. And then tomorrow, when the hurt comes back, because it will come back, make the same choice. And the day after. And the day after. And one day you will make that choice and the hurt won't come back. And on that day, you will know what freedom feels like. And you will wonder how you lived so long without it. I want to address one more group of people before I close. And that is the people who are angry at God. This is the unforgiveness that nobody talks about in church because it feels like the most dangerous thing to admit. If you stand up in a congregation and say, I'm struggling to forgive my brother, people will hug you and pray with you. If you stand up and say, I'm angry at God and I haven't been able to let it go, people will look at you differently. They'll wonder if you're saved. They'll be unsure what to do with you. But Jesus showed me that this is one of the most common forms of unforgiveness in the church. People who prayed for a sick child and the child died. People who trusted God with a marriage and the marriage ended. People who believed for a promise and the promise seemed to never come. People who were abused in the name of God. People who followed all the rules and watched the people who broke all the rules seem to prosper. And they have never said it out loud, but deep down in the most honest corner of their souls, they are holding something against God. They are worshiping a God they are secretly angry at. They are serving in the church of someone they are quietly resentful toward. And Jesus wants me to tell you something about that. He is not afraid of your anger. He is not shocked by it. He is not going to remove his love from you because you are honest about it. What he wants, what he has always wanted, is for you to bring it to him. Not to perform peace that you don't feel. Not to push the anger down and cover it with praise songs. To come to him and say, God, I am angry. I don't understand what you did. Well, I don't understand what you allowed. I don't understand why you didn't stop it. And I need you to help me trust you again, because I have been holding you at a distance because of this, and I don't want to hold you at a distance anymore. That conversation, that raw, unguarded, honest conversation, is the beginning of the deepest intimacy with God that a human being can experience. Not the put-together Sunday morning version, the broken, bewildered, I don't understand, but I'm bringing it to you anyway version. He can handle your anger. He handled mine. He is not fragile. He is not defensive. He is not going to strike you down for being honest. He already knows what you're feeling. He has always known. He is waiting for you to say it out loud so that the healing can begin. Let me tell you where I am today. I am still working construction. I went back to work 6 weeks after the hospital. Same site, actually. The first day I walked back onto that third floor and stood on the exact spot where I went down, I stood there for a long time and I didn't say anything. I just stood there and I remembered everything. And then I said out loud, quietly, so no one could hear me, thank you. That is all I said. Thank you. My brother Marcus and I have talked 5 times since I left that voicemail. We are not all the way back yet. There are conversations we still need to have, trust that still needs to be rebuilt, things that are still tender. But the wall is down, and my mother has had both of her sons in the same room for the first time in 7 years, and whatever else is still unresolved, that alone feels like a miracle. My prayer life is unrecognizable. Unrecognizable. I don't know how to say this without sounding like I'm exaggerating, but prayer used to feel like sending letters to an address I wasn't sure was real. Now prayer feels like a phone call, like a real-time conversation, like someone is actually there, actually listening, actually responding. That does not mean I always get the answers I want when I want them. It means I no longer feel alone in the asking. I joined a men's Bible study group at a church near my apartment. Not my old church. I needed something new, a fresh start. And I have been honest in that group in a way I have never been honest in a church setting before. Not performing, not presenting my best Christian self. Actually honest. About the struggle, about the fear, about the days when faith is hard and doubt is loud. And what I have found in that honesty is community I did not know was possible. Real community. The kind that Jesus described when he talked about the early church. The kind that requires risk and vulnerability and the willingness to be seen. The kind that unforgiveness, with its closed-door policy and its wall-building tendencies, had been keeping me from for years. I am not a finished project. I want to be very clear about that. I have not arrived. I have bad days. I have days when the old patterns try to reassert themselves, when something happens and I can feel the reflex to close up and hold on and protect myself. But now I know what that reflex is. I know where it leads. And I have a reference point. That luminous place, that conversation, with those eyes that knew everything about me and loved me anyway. And I use that reference point to come back. Every time, I use it to come back. As I close, I want to say this. Jesus told me to tell you he loves you. I know you have heard that. I know it can sound like a thing people say. I am asking you to hear it differently today. I am asking you to hear it as something I witnessed. I was in his presence. I sat with him. I saw his face. And the love that I felt coming from him was not abstract. It was not theological. It was personal. It was specific. It knew my name. It knew my story. It knew every stupid thing I had ever done, and every quiet thing I had ever hoped for, and every prayer I had ever prayed, and every prayer I had stopped praying because I stopped believing they were being heard. And it loved all of it. Well, not just the good parts, all of it. That love is available to you, not a version of it. Not a reduced version tailored to your level of performance or your degree of biblical knowledge or the cleanliness of your record. The full version. The whole thing. But to receive the full version, you have to open the door. And the door is opened by forgiveness. Not partially, fully. Not the performance of forgiveness. The actual decision, spoken out loud, repeated as many times as it takes. Until one morning you wake up and the room in your heart that has been locked for years is finally open. He is on the other side of that door. He has always been on the other side of that door. He has never left. He has been waiting there, patient, persistent, with that deep, unhurried smile, waiting for you to turn the key. Turn it today. My name is Lucas Merritt. I am 35 years old. I slumped on a building site in Chicago, and I was dead for 10 minutes. And I came back with one message from the mouth of the one who knows you by name and loves you beyond your comprehension. Forgive, not for their sake, for yours, for his, for the eternity that is waiting on the other side of the decision you have been putting off for too long. The door is right there. The key is in your hand, and he is waiting. Lord Jesus, I pray right now for every person hearing these words. Lord, you know what they're carrying. You know the names they have never said out loud in prayer. You know the offenses that have been polished and maintained and justified. You know the doors that have been locked for years. Lord, I ask you to do what only you can do, to reach into the places in their souls where the unforgiveness lives and bring the same freedom to them that you brought to me. Not because they deserve it, because you love them, because you died for them. Because you went to the cross so that no chain would be permanent, no door would be permanently sealed, no wound would be beyond your healing. Do it today, Lord, do it today, in the name that is above every name, in the name of Jesus. Amen.